Why are black people finding humor in this apparent battle between Indians versus American workers, aka, according to them, white people, over H-1B? Now, during this whole conversation over H-1B, which hinders American workers, there have been highlights amongst so-called white people talking about how, part of this specifically targets them, especially when you can find a bunch of Indian posters making those statements about, white people being this and that. And what I've noticed is that Negroes have decided to, of course, inject themselves into this conversation, uh, putting up gifs and memes, basically laughing over this whole thing. And of course, since they're butthurt about being synonymous with the beneficiaries of DEI, they're up here saying, oh, look at that. White people want DEI. And it just goes to show you just how low IQ most so called Negroes are. Because it seems they fail to realize when you're talking about the American worker not just being replaced in the tech industry, but many other industries as well, that includes their dumbasses too. And what a lot of Negroes are keenly aware of when it comes from when it comes to Indian Americans, and especially Indians fresh from India, Negroes are the last group of people they ever want their loved ones seen being around, particularly when you're talking about in an intimate relationship like marriage. Negroes are keenly aware that Indian Americans usually stay within their own more so than others, but if they do date out or marry out, they don't want them around Negroes. I personally know of stories where a black dude got with an Indian chick and her family disowned her. But this is the very same demographic that is being allowed to invade this country that these Negroes want to kiki and ha ha about injecting themselves into the job market, which then leads to pretty much Indian nepotism where they're hiring their own. Guess what? They fuck with niggas the least. And so they, more than most, should be very fired up about this situation. Because again, as we've seen with JD Vance's wife, I mean, if they are going to mess with people outside of their own, it's typically going to be a white person. They probably would rather their offspring engage in bestiality before they dare engage in relationship with black Americans. But just because Negroes live, they live to see white people upset, that's why they're celebrating this. That's why they're celebrating this. And just, again, too dim-witted to realize American workers, even though, white Americans are being highlighted, but American workers include their dumbasses too. And again, part of it is that they believe they're coming and taking just these tech jobs that they know that they're not going to qualify for anyway. Hell, not only won't they qualify for it, they're not even trying to pursue that work. But it includes many other industries outside of the tech industry as well. But again, this is what happens to the very same demographic where many of them are now complaining about, immigrants from south of the border taking over resources that they believe should be theirs. Well, this is what happens because those very same Negroes upset about that voted for it for decades and labeled Republicans, so-called white people that voted against it as racist because they didn't want more people of color coming into this country. Because the fact of the matter is, all these immigrants coming into this country have zero white guilt. And they're just not going to be putting up with Negroes, especially if they end up becoming the dominant demographic controlling a large part of American society. I mean, all of these sort of imaginations about white people oppressing them, oh, it'll literally be happening if it's a bunch of Indians and Hispanics dominating the majority of the field. Arabs, from Middle Eastern countries. And guess what? Yes, white people will be affected, but guess who's going to be affected first and the worst? Especially when you just talk about numbers. It'll be Negroes. They're too stupid to comprehend that fact. And I've like tuned into a number of Twitter spaces and YouTube panels, and I've heard these Negroes not get that, not comprehend that. Now, again, I have also heard some highlight that they see it, but again, there's still always elements of them that's ha-hawing over the situation because they see it as, oh, well, so-called white people are mad. Utter morons. But again, their dedication with their hate love obsession over so-called white people is what continues to have majorities Negroes lose while everybody else comes in and exploits this country. Because Negroes, they pretty much act like foreign-born people that hate this country because of their continuous repeat of the slavery narrative. And talking about civil rights instead of being on the same train and voting against these policies that allow open borders in various ways into the job market. But again, a lot of these Negroes living up to that three-fifths of a human being uh, narrative that's been put out there.